I always felt like something was missing in The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and I've only recently realized what it is. The lack of conflict between humans and non-humans. The violence between these two groups and their schemes against one another is one of the central driving forces in the Witcher games, at least 1 and 2. If you've played the trilogy, you may have noticed the distinct lack of the non-human freedom fighters / terrorists, the Scoia'tel. I find this jarring as a Witcher enthusiast because some of the big decisions of the earlier games involve picking a side between humans and non-humans, or choosing your own third path, the path of neutrality. But also, Sapkowski's Witcher books are riddled with this conflict and ideas of racism, colonialism, and genocide. In The Witcher 1, one of the political conflicts is between Yevon of the pro-non-human Scoia'tel and Siegfried of the pro-human Order of the Flaming Rose. Throughout the game, Geralt can lean on either faction in the pursuit of his goals, and Geralt as a character is often defined and redefined by how quote-unquote human he is. You're also a witness to the hatred and the violence each side inflicts upon the other. Non-humans are relegated to swamps and ghettos, and the same hatred humans display towards them is often the same they kind of display towards you. A freak, a mutant, a witcher. If you've watched the Netflix series or read the books, this shouldn't be too unfamiliar. Witchers are considered mutants and others, and this idea of othering and violence towards them is core to the world of Nilfgaard and the Northern Kingdoms. This human-non-human conflict is further built on in Witcher 2, Assassin of Kings, because you learn the Scoia'tael support the assassination of King Foltest of Temeria. There is an added dimension now of an ever unstable political arena between non-humans, the Northern Kingdoms, and the lurking Nilfgaard Empire. You zoom out from just the city of Vizima to seeing the plots of kings, mages, and emperors, each using the mistrust and hatred from racism to further their own agendas of political conquest. Yorvith, for example, one of the Scoia'tael commandos, realizes that he's become a pawn in a bigger game, and even though Geralt can choose to fight for a kingdom of equality, Upper Edirn, between humans and non-humans, it ultimately fails. All of this is a consequence of one key decision in Sapkowski's world, that gnomes, elves, dwarves, halflings, and other non-humans are considered indigenous to the world, and humans are colonizer from a multiverse beyond. Unlike the peaceful coexistence and the passing of the torch found in Tolkien's Middle-earth, the backdrop of humans and non-humans in the world of The Witcher is one of violent expansionism and dark brutality. Not that all of fantasy is a response to Tolkien and The Lord of the Rings, but as a teenager playing through these games and then later reading the books, seeing how you can go from Legolas of the Woodland Realm to this guy.
Oh, beggar, what's the difference? 1 dwan less.
It was eye-opening for me. It broadened what fantasy as a genre could look like and mean, what themes it could tackle and address. I never thought elven archers could be elven terrorists. I never thought I'd play as a character who has to choose between factions of men and elves. Can't I be Aragorn and just unite them all? This all positions Geralt, who is neither human or non-human, as a great anchor to explore all of this conflict, to explore the ideas of racism, colonialism, genocide, and more. The first 2 games of The Witcher delved into some of these animosities and hard choices, but when it came to The Witcher 3, it was all forgotten. We know from a developer interview in a German publication, Gamers Global, that the Scoia'tael and fan favorite Yorvith did have some role to play in the 3rd game originally, but ultimately became cut content. We also know that the themes of Yorvith and the surviving commandos were to color the darker shades of the current conflict. Quoting one of the senior quest writers for The Witcher 3 on the Something Awful forums, by the time we realized that Yorvith's quest wasn't working, he was actually a secondary character in a much bigger story about the war, it was too late to add something new. About the only thing we'd have had time to do would have been to put his dead body somewhere with a note, which was suggested. I think that would have been a pretty poor conclusion to his story, so it was better to just leave him unresolved. The Nilfgaardians and the horrors of the ongoing war were largely put into the background, the very distant background of The Witcher 3. There were no more commandos, plagues, and war crimes. The games shifted its focus more to the wild hunt in Ciri, perhaps to the detriment of the uniqueness and richness of the Witcher world. It's a shame because the previous games and even the books have always been about this less heroic interrogation of what is right.
What will happen if we allow a lynching? What if people see that might makes right? Who'll guarantee they won't desire to avenge their wrongs, real and imagined? Who'll protect people whose only fault is noble birth from the exasperated mob? And where will it lead?
I was hoping we were going to see a further exploration of this human versus non-human conflict, particularly in the resolution of Geralt's video game story, because his story in the books ultimately concludes when he does wade into the human-non-human conflict definitively. He decides to defend his dwarven friends from a human pogrom in Rivia. The missing third act of the non-human-human conflict hurts even more because of how the Witcher series butchered a lot of the nuance and tragedy of the elves and other races. The Thanid coup at the end of Season 3 is a great example of this. It's not about finding Ciri or seeking revenge for baby killing or any of that, but rather the Northern Kingdoms, mages, elves, and Nilfgaard all playing a political game of alliances and shadow wars, attempting to play all sides off one another in pursuit of their own. And for the elves, it's about an attempt to carve out an elven queendom of Dol Blathanna by viciously undermining human powers, and for Francesca, betraying other mages. Francesca and Filavandrel are supposed to be ruthless political operatives who have a hatred for all humans, but who are also unafraid of being involved in human affairs. Francesca's murder baby spree in the TV show is so comically dumb and pales in comparison to the widespread campaigns of terror that the Scoia'tael undertake and Francesca's Eretuzan politicking. The show ruins all hope of showing us the elves as two sides of the same coin, the terrorist and the oppressed. So when it comes to The Witcher 3, all of this human-non-human fighting is really forgotten. It's left in a pile of cut code and textures and assets. But also, the third game of the trilogy treats the political machinations of the franchise differently altogether. The Wikipedia entries for these non-human factions and characters are all loosely tied up somewhere offstage. For Yorvith, we get in alive and well in this comic strip. For Yavin, we don't know if he is canonically dead or not. For the Scoia'tael, the wiki just says they're around. They have a few minor side quests. They're not that important, which I don't understand because the past two games have shown us how important they are, but I guess that's about it. Which is unfortunate, because we also avoid the idea of being human being interrogated again in the triumphant conclusion of this big epic saga. And I think it's so central to Sapkowski's world that we ask the idea of humanity. Geralt instead kind of becomes more of a classical hero rather than a freak and a mutant who has to finally make a choice. Sure, we have some nuanced character drama, and I love The Witcher 3, but it always feels like it's missing something, and it's always going to keep feeling like it's missing something. It will always feel weird playing the Battle of Kaer Morhen and knowing that you have Letho fighting beside you, but you can't have your favorite patch-eyed elven commando. The third act of the Witcher trilogy tries to do so much. It attempts to be a book 6 of Sapkowski's saga and follow up Lady of the Lake, picking up the threads of Ciri, Yennefer, and the Wild Hunt. It struggles under the weight of the human versus non-human battle that has dominated the previous Witcher 1 and Witcher 2 games. The end result is a game that, while a titan on its own, fails to meaningfully conclude the Geralt of the games and its examination of racism, terrorism, and colonialism. So we're really only left wondering now, where have all the non-humans gone? And will they return in the inevitable Witcher 4? Hey everyone, thanks for watching. Please do leave a comment if you liked this video. I love reading comments and I try to respond to as much as I can. And let me know what your thoughts are and if you'd like to see our favorite Scoia'tael return in subsequent Witcher games. I know for sure I would, hence this video. And as always, see you all on the next one.